Hi everyone, it's Chris. Are you wondering which cybersecurity position is right for you? Well, I've compiled a list, and while it's in a spreadsheet format, I apologize, but it's probably the best way that I could find to help you decide what position might interest you and some of the details and areas and essentially what might help you map the right position to you. So what I've done is I've created this table, and I'll put a link in the description so that you can download and look through this table. And what I've done is I've captured several different attributes. So I put the title, the core areas of more or less what the position does, and I'll try to speak to each one. I've either worked, managed, or worked with most of these positions, so I'll try to give you an insight into them. So we have position title, core areas, person fit. So what type of personality, what type of attributes should you have for the position? That's under person fit. The employer requirements, what type of background are some and or most employers looking for? Common duties, again, this is really high level, so please note I don't have everything listed out because obviously it would be too much data, but I'll give you some of the overviews of some of the common duties, some common certifications that you might want to have or that employers look for, common degrees, and then recommended experience. Now again, this is as close as I could get to a one-size-fits-all, but different companies, different locations might change these a bit. So the way I'm going to go through this is I'll try to keep the position at the top line, and I'll speak across it in each one of these areas to hopefully give you some more insight into the position. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So the first position is a security analyst. So what are some of the core areas? Network security, threat analysis. Think of this position as a mixture of a sysadmin and maybe a security operations center analyst. So you're probably admining, configuring, security equipment, while also maybe doing some monitoring and probably also taking on some projects. So this is one of those positions that is pretty well-rounded where you're doing a lot of different activities. What type of person? So if you're analytical or detail-oriented, this is a good fit for you. Employer requirements, so obviously you need to have a strong IT foundation and you should have a cybersecurity background. Common duties, monitoring security incidents, performing some threat analysis. I should have added in there also some system configurations as well. Common certs are Security Plus, CYSA Plus, Splunk, ISCs, CC, CASP is another one. Of course, there are others as well, such as like vendor-specific certifications that might actually lend themselves to some of the hardware. One example is maybe Cisco CCNA is a good one, or any firewall type of cert, such as Checkpoint, Fortinet, Juniper, any of those types. Common degree, so cybersecurity is obviously a good one, information security, or even common IT degrees. Really any technical degree is probably a good degree to have for this, including computer science. Recommended experience, so 0 to 2 years working in IT and or security operations. So if you are a SOC analyst, this is a good position that you could probably go into, or vice versa. If you're a security analyst, you could probably move into a SOC analyst type of position. Okay, so the next one, hopefully this works scrolling up, and it does. All right, cool. So let's talk about Security Operations Center Analyst, or SOC Analyst. So very popular position. What do? They perform incident response, and of course they monitor for threats, so threat monitoring. The type of person that fits this, if you're good under pressure, You're able to learn things quickly. Of course, you're able to watch a screen, analyze attacks, because you're probably going to be working with a SIM, looking at IDS, IPS type of monitors where all the attacks are aggregated and you are essentially reviewing each alert and acting it as appropriate. So employer requirements. So a lot of times SOC analysts have to work different shifts. So the ability to work shifts, and of course monitoring traffic for attacks. So you should know how to create tickets, how to communicate well, work well with a team, and take ownership of incidents. So common duties, of course, are real-time threat monitoring, incident reporting, and again, like I said, creating those tickets, answering calls, helping end users that might have questions, because often the SOC is one of the first points of contact in a company relating to any security events, including email events as well. Some common certifications, there are a lot. So I'll be honest, right here I'm just listing a few, but CompTIA Security Plus, GSEC, that's a SANS cert, CYSA Plus, Cisco CyberOps is a good one, ISC CC, and for those of you that might be looking for a free cert, the ISC CC is free, and also Google has a cybersecurity certification that is free and actually lends itself well to this position. Again, some common degrees, cybersecurity, really any IT type of degree translates well into a SOC analyst, and again, including computer science. Experience with, so what are the recommended experiences? So working with SIM, Security Incident and Events Managers, that's what SIM stands for. You should also have 0 to 1 years of SOC experience. This is one of those positions that is a good entry-level position, because if you have a good background and you can show an employer that you're able to monitor and respond to incidents, a lot of times it is a type of position that you could go from an IT or maybe even college or boot camp, that sort of thing, into a SOC analyst. But I'll be honest with you, you need to have good foundations and you need to be able to show an employer that you have the well-rounded skills to monitor events, react to them, and handle incident response activities. All right, so I have 20 total positions listed. So we are moving on to number 3. And as I said earlier, I'll put a link to this spreadsheet for you to download. And please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss this type of good information that hopefully is helping you. All right, so let's go into the vulnerability analyst. So core areas, of course, vulnerability scanning, pen testing, the type of person. You want to be a problem solver, be really good and have attention to detail. Again, you should have knowledge of scanning tools. So employers will expect you to be familiar with Nmap, running Metasploit, and other tools that are used to identify vulnerabilities. And of course, you want to be able and familiar with conducting vulnerability assessments. So that means knowing how to scan, assess, prioritize, and recommend resolutions for different systems. And of course, you should be very comfortable writing reports as well. Some common certifications, Security Plus, Cisco CyberOps, CVA, okay? And common degrees, of course, cybersecurity, IT, computer science. Any technical related IT degree is something that will work well with this position. And again, as I said, for recommended experience, there's should be familiarity with scanning tools, and some entry-level positions will place you under a more senior vulnerability analyst. So that's a good one to also start out from no experience, or even if you have a couple of years of IT experience, that'll certainly help. All right, moving on to number 4, cybersecurity consultant. Now, this is one that is not necessarily entry level. This is one that you probably want to have a little bit of experience going into, because you're essentially a consultant. You're going into a company and helping them with their cybersecurity posture to strengthen it. So what are some of the core areas? Of course, you need to be good at risk assessment. You need to be able to understand their systems and assess them. And of course, you should be good at security planning, being able to write up an overall plan on how they can strengthen their overall posture. What type of person fits this? You have to be a great communicator. So you can't be shy about leading a conversation, taking proactive measures and seeing them to completion, which means interacting with several different people, both on the management and the technical side. And you should also be a strategic thinker. So employer requirements, of course, client-facing experience. They want to know that you've done this before, you're able to engage with multiple groups, understand their environment. So having that client-facing experience is important. What are some of the common duties? Again, advising clients on security strategies, performing assessments, reports. I would say some project management is important as well, knowing how to prioritize and develop timelines for completing a lot of these important milestones. Some common certifications: Security Plus, CISSP Associate for those who are new, but if you have 5 or more years of experience, then the CISSP is a good one. And of course, again, this isn't the complete list of certs, just some of them. There are plenty others that will be helpful for this. Common degrees, of course, information security, a business degree is good. Really, any technical degree would be helpful for this. And recommended experience, you should have at least 1 to 3 years in IT or cybersecurity roles, and that shows employers that you understand their environment and can carry out the tasks. Okay, moving on to pen tester. So this is a really popular one, and I'll tell people, so if you're new to cybersecurity, if you have experience working with Linux, scripting, networking, operating systems in general, then this is a good position to go for. But if you're new to all of it, I'll be honest with you, this can be a challenging position to land because of the fact that it requires so many skills. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it could be a little more challenging. So I just don't want anyone to get discouraged. It's possible, it just might be a little bit harder. So core areas are, of course, ethical hacking, red teaming, so being on the offensive side of cybersecurity. The type of person this should fit or could fit is if you are creative. So when you're doing pen testing, it's not always straightforward. You have to use the tools in creative ways. You often have to understand the environment, i.e. their network, where you can scan and perform pen testing, where you cannot. So you need to have a really good command of the tools and also, of course, be a strong problem solver. Employer requirements. So knowledge of attack techniques. And of course, you need to know Linux. And of course, it doesn't hurt to know some of the pen test specific operating systems, which are essentially Linux with a lot of the tools built in, such as Kali Linux, Parrot. One of the popular tools, of course, is Metasploit. You should be very familiar and comfortable with scanning using multiple tools, Nmap, Nessus, etc. And of course, you should know scripting. So Bash scripting, Python are 2 common ones that are often used for pen testing. Common duties, of course, simulating attacks. So you should know how to simulate an attack. And of course, identifying vulnerabilities. That means understanding the different versions, finding a version that might be vulnerable, and then knowing how to exploit that, or how to view a system, see what they're running, such as are they running a web server, are they running a database like SQL, and understanding and knowing the different attacks and how to actually compromise those and actually carry them out. So it's one thing to just know and understand the attack, it's another to actually be able to either use a tool and or craft your own attack. So that's why Pen testing is a bit more technical and advanced when it comes to these cybersecurity positions. So some common certs, Pentest Plus, OSCP, which is a far more advanced hands-on certification, but it's one that is probably the one that you'd want to get to be recognized as a pen tester, or kind of more of the expert level. So some common degrees: cybersecurity, computer science, other IT degrees would work as well. But again, you really need to get hands-on. You should have some experience going into this. Recommended experience: again, you should know Python, Bash, scripting, be very comfortable with that. There are some junior level pen testers, so 0 to 2 years experience is common. But of course, these days with the competitive job market, the more experience you have, the better. All right, so moving on to number 7, incident responder. So this is one that I'll say is often mixed in with a SOC analyst position. So sometimes you're performing SOC analyst duties and you're acting as an incident responder. Some companies have their own specific group for this. So I'll tell you that it sort of depends on the company's overall structure. The core areas that you'll want to know are, of course, or the duties and stuff that they are going to apply are incident response. Of course, something happens, responding to it, knowing all the steps. Of course, threat detection is important as well, so knowing when and how to respond to those incidents. You have to be the type of person that fits, quick thinker. So you need to be able to think quickly, react, stay calm under pressure, be very organized, know how to prioritize, and of course have good communication skills. So I know I'm adding some extra ones in there, but I just want to give you more insights where I can. Employer requirements. So of course, experience with incident handling, right? They want to know that you know how to handle an incident, who to speak to, how to speak to them, how to report that up to management, how to document everything that's going on. So this takes a number of skills. So experience with incident handling, which includes all of those. Splunk is a common one that is used, especially in larger companies. QRadar is obviously popular, Manage Engine, and of course EDR. So you definitely want to be popular with all those. And EDR is, of course, extended detection and response. So that means your SIM that also has built-in capabilities to respond to an endpoint. Okay, so some common duties: responding to, of course, security incidents, performing forensic analysis. So when something happens, you want to, of course, isolate it, but then you want to be able to go back and figure out how and why it happened, to write a report, and of course take mitigation actions to help prevent what happened in the future or from spreading. So this is where that quick thinking comes along. Sometimes you have to identify what the cause is and then put in mitigation steps quickly to either detect or prevent, or of course both. That's a lot. All right, some common certifications. Cisco CyberOps is a good one. Security Plus, and then SANS GCIH, so Certified Incident Handler. Some common degrees: computer science, and of course most information security degrees are good to have, as are other degrees. Now, I know people who've worked in this that have completely unrelated degrees, so again, I'm just giving you some suggestions. Don't take anything that I'm saying as finite or the end-all be-all. This is just an overview to help you. So again, if you have a technical degree or even a non-technical, you can apply it, then go for that. And of course, recommended experience: 0 to 2 years in either SOC analyst positions or incident response. Okay, cybersecurity analyst. So this is one that, again, is very closely related to a SOC analyst, but similar to also a systems analyst. This is one that it's more cyber specific, and of course gets hands-on between the SOC analyst duties and the systems duties, and of course, probably working projects. So some core areas that you're going to want to know are risk analysis, security monitoring, and of course, some system administration, configuration, and implementation as well. The type of person that fits this, if you're analytical and you have good research skills, that helps as well. Employer requirements. So again, you're going to want to be familiar with IDS, IPS, intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, SIMs. Again, working on the extended detection response. You want to be familiar with Windows and Linux and how to read those logs. Common duties, of course, are analyzing security data, reporting security risks. So that means putting those reports and also reporting them to management, which means you need to be able to articulate both technical data to a non-technical audience. Some common certs, of course, are Cisco CyberOps, Security Plus, SSCP is a good one. Common degrees, of course, cybersecurity or any IT and or technical degree is helpful. And you should have about 0 to 2 years in IT or cybersecurity. All right, number 9, information security specialist. So this is one where, again, you're kind of bridging the IT and cybersecurity. So some core areas that you want to know are policy development, security implementation. So this is more of when you take the policy and start to actually implement it. So, when you write out a policy, it's one thing to say, oh, are you implementing these controls on firewalls? But it's a whole different thing to actually then go right and apply the actual rules. That's where the technical portion comes out. So again, with this role, you're sort of in the middle of both of those. So this is a good one that if you like working on the policy and compliance side, but you also like the technical side, this is a great position for you. The person fit. You want to be methodical, and of course you want to be compliance focused with that applied type of knowledge in areas as well. Employer requirements, of course, knowledge of security standards and having that technical background help. Common duties, developing security policies, implementing controls. Common certifications, CISSP. Again, if you're new, the CISSP associate. If you've been working in the field for a bit, then the CISSP is a good one. Security Plus is good. And this one also covers a lot of other certifications as well. So these are just some that are helpful. And again, you hear the kind of repeating the common degrees: information security, cybersecurity, computer science. Any technical degree is good for this field. And recommended experience, 0 to 2 years working IT. Now, it's really important if you have that IT background, that translates really, really well, because that means that you know how to work in that professional environment. So it's a great jump into cybersecurity. Also, if you've done any type of security and or system administration, that's helpful as well. All right, so number 10, we are halfway there. Again, if you find this helpful, please share this, like it, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future videos. And obviously, if you're having trouble getting your career started, check out some of my training. I'm here to help you. Okay, so let's move on to number 10. So security systems administrator. So again, this one is more primarily focused on managing systems. So some core areas are network security. You definitely want to be familiar with networking, how to secure it, and of course, systems management. What type of person is a good fit? So you want to have a variety of technical skills. So you want to be on the technical side, and of course, you want to be a problem solver. A lot of times, people don't think about the troubleshooting side when it comes to cybersecurity. We're often very focused on the securing part, but I can tell you, and anyone who's worked in cyber will also probably echo what I'm saying, things don't always work as planned. You go to secure something and maybe you apply a GPO and it breaks another program. So you have to be able to troubleshoot that. or you implement a firewall rule, suddenly communications stop. So you need to know how to do network captures and read packet dumps and that sort of thing to figure out what is going on. So again, you've got to be a good problem solver. And that applies to really any position in IT or cybersecurity, of course. Employer requirements, so system administration experience is key. So understanding Windows, Linux, maybe working with a WAF, which is a web application firewall, to protect sites and or other systems that are hosted, such as databases as well. You should have a little bit or understand how firewalls work as well. Some common duties, configuring security systems. So again, having that hands-on skill. Managing security software. So understanding how to install, configure, and apply the security configurations to different software are important. Some common certs are CompTIA Security Plus, CCNA, both the Cyber Ops and CCNA Security are some good ones as well. All right, common degrees. So of course, IT degrees, computer science, are very helpful. Recommended experience. So this one, typically you want to have about 1 to 3 years of IT administration. So can you start with no experience? Probably, but it helps to have at least 1 to 3 years of experience. All right, let's move on to number 11. So threat intelligence analyst. So very interesting position. So some core areas are, of course, intelligence gathering, data analysis. So understanding the different families of attacks, reading about malware, understanding how that might apply or impact your company. So there's so much threat intelligence out there. You need to have the ability to understand the business and then determine what threats are the ones that you have to be careful of. Of course, you need to be careful of all of them, but what are some that might be specific to your business? So that takes that understanding of the threats and an understanding of business to gather up the intelligence and help the other security teams implement safeguards to protect the company. So the person fit, you should be research oriented. So again, you should love to dive in, learn about the different malware and different IOCs, indicators of compromise, and what they mean, okay? And of course, you should be analytical. Employer requirements, so understanding of cyber threats, of course, threat intelligence, and that also includes some of the feeds as well, okay? So the threat feeds are information that providers of threat feeds give to you so that you are aware of things that have been validated, okay? And not all cases are all feeds validated. So make sure that if you're working in this position, that is it an intelligence feed where it's been validated, or is it a raw feed where there's something that's detected and they're just giving you that raw information? You should be comfortable working with IOCs, again, indicators of compromise, IP addresses, DNS, hashes, file names, different dates, email addresses, the list goes on. These are all indicators of compromise, that your system has been attacked, and the things that you want to filter and or block from your networks. And in some cases, you want to be familiar with signature writing. So depends on the company, but in some instances, you'll have to write signatures that implement these IOCs or other details that you learn from your threat intelligence. All right, some common duties, analyzing threat data, reporting on threat trends. And again, this is where you have to interact with management, take the technical information and break it down into understandable chunks for the non-technical audience to understand. Some common certs, again, Security Plus, CTIA is also a common one. And again, there's others as well. Some common degrees. Cybersecurity, I put in here data science or even data analytics, because a lot of times you will be working with those feeds, which means that you'll be having to actually manipulate data, format it, translate it, restructure it, that sort of thing to get it into your system. So depending on what this position is in the company, you might have to be very comfortable working with data. Recommended experience, 0 to 2 years in intelligence or threat intelligence or cybersecurity roles. And this is a good role that, again, you could go from SOC analyst into threat intelligence or vice versa. So it's kind of one of those roles that you could go back and forth with. All right, number 12, network security administrator. So of course, some core areas, network security, you have to be really strong with networking, understand firewalls, and then understand how to essentially analyze traffic and understand how those flows affect the company and or overall security. The type of person that might fit if you're technical detail oriented, okay? Employer requirements, experience with network management, switching, routing, firewalls, ACLs, which are access control lists. You should be very comfortable working with all of those. Common duties, of course, managing network security. That means working with firewalls, the network part, firewalls, switches, working with the network team to make sure that their routing protocols are using authentication and are validating their sources properly and that everything is locked down. So a lot of tasks go into this. And of course, configuring firewalls is important. Some common certifications, Security Plus, CCNA Security, others as well. If you're a CCNP, that helps. If you are essentially any type of networking such as Juniper, Fortinet, and others, those help as well. Some common degrees, computer science, network engineering, networking, anything that works with communications is important. Recommended experience. Again, this is one that typically isn't necessarily entry level. There are some, but you typically want to have 1 to 3 years of network administration and or an IT background. So again, I'll say it. Don't take any of what I'm saying as absolute. It changes from company to company. Think of this as just kind of a helpful guide for you. All right, so let's move on to number 13, security engineer. So of course, systems design, security implementation, you type of person, you want to be technical, you want to be a problem solver, you need to be hands-on, be comfortable cabling things up, performing those engineering tasks. Employer requirements, of course, experience with security systems, design, you have to know how to design and implement something, networking, understand how to place sensors within a network. That means IPS, IDS, or other types of sensors. You have to be very comfortable installing and configuring. And of course, common duties are designing and implementing security measures. Common certs are CISSP and or the associate Security Plus. There are so many other ones that apply to this that like CCNP, CCNA, Juniper, Fortinet, any of the vendor certs are also good ones for this. Common degrees, computer science, very common for people with a computer science background to go into security engineering, as are a lot of the other IT degrees. So any technical degree is good to have. Recommended experience. There are some junior security engineering positions out there. Having 1 to 3 years of IT experience and or cybersecurity is good. This is another one where people from the SOC tend to move into security engineering and vice versa. So again, this is one of those positions where if you're an IT admin, you can move into security engineering. If you're a network, maybe you're a network-focused engineer, security engineering is also a good kind of crossover into cybersecurity. All right, the next position that we have is an application security analyst. So here you're analyzing applications for any type of vulnerability. So this is where you're getting into code analysis. So some of the core areas that you'll want to know is, of course, software security, understanding those life cycles, having a strong coding background. And of course, performing code analysis. That means looking for those vulnerabilities, reviewing the functions, reviewing the different modules within software to see if there's anything that could be exploited or perhaps maybe has unchecked bounds or is not doing any type of type checking or insertion, input validation. The list goes on and on. Person fit. So obviously being analytical, someone who has very strong programming skills, and of course understands the different threats and how they pertain to software. Employer requirements, of course you need to have an understanding of software development. That means probably some experience, developing software, understanding secure design principles, and of course code testing. Common duties, of course, reviewing code for security issues, implementing secure coding practices. Common certifications, Security Plus, CSSLP. Common degrees, this is where computer science definitely is one that comes in very strong. Software engineering is another one. And of course, there are other IT degrees that come into play and do work for this as well, but you'll need to have that strong programming background, which guess what? You can be self-taught. And these days there's so many different resources and options for learning how to code. And for recommended experience, software development from 0 to 2 years, and of course having prior experience in being an application security analyst is also going to help you as well. All right, so the next one is a risk analyst. So again, right here, very similar to the GRC roles, this is where you're going to essentially manage the risk and how it impacts businesses. Sorry, I had to gather my thoughts there. So here, one of the core areas is, of course, risk management and compliance. But really, when you're as a risk analyst, you want to be able to look at the business and figure out where the impacts affect the overall business. And it sounds easy, but the thing is you have to be able to organize, review a business model, how the company's laid out, and then identify their critical aspects to see what would impact and what the different levels of impacts are. So it's a very interesting position in that you have to be able to take in everything, determine where the weaknesses are, and then of course categorize both from a qualitative, in other words, coming up with a high, low type of marking, and a quantitative where you actually score it with a numerical value to determine the amount of risk that a company has. So again, there's a lot of analysis that comes into this, but you also have to know the business side to understand the different impacts. So the person fit is, of course, analytical, strategic thinker. Okay, so like a business-minded, very strategical type of thinker. Employer requirements, so understanding the risk frameworks and how they directly apply to the business. Okay. Common duties, of course, assessing risks, developing risk mitigation strategies. Some project management comes into play. Of course, you need to have really strong communication skills, and you should be able to talk to both the technical and non-technical audiences. Common certifications, of course, the accolade CCRF is excellent for this. CRISC, CompTIA, Security Plus, and others come into play as well. Common degrees, having a business degree, definitely relevant with this, and of course, information security, even a focus on GRC or compliance would help as well. You should have 0 to 2 years in risk management or cybersecurity. So coming into this role, you should have some experience and know and understand how cybersecurity and the different impacts actually affect a business. Okay, so let's go to number 16. And I said that there were 20 earlier. I did remove a couple that were redundant, so we ended up with 19. So quick correction on that. All right, so on to number 16, Cloud Security Specialist. So obviously some core areas are understanding of cloud security, how the different platforms implement security and what some of their weaknesses are and what a lot of the best practices are. So understanding those, and also, of course, cloud infrastructure. The type of person that fits this role is someone who is technical and forward thinking. So you have to think to yourself, how is the business utilizing these cloud platforms? Are they using platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service? Well, with each of those comes different levels of security. So you need to have a really solid understanding of which one of those models that they're using and how does it impact the business. So that's where that forward thinking comes in. Employer requirements. Of course, you want to have experience with cloud platforms such as AWS, Azure, Google Compute Platform, and some of the other ones as well. Common duties, of course, is managing cloud security, knowing the different tools and the different security levels that are available in the different platforms is important. And of course, implementing cloud security measures, how to actually secure these cloud instances and different offerings. And again, they change between each one of the different models, such as the platform. Infrastructure is, again, that one relies more on administrators to implement security, whereas platform and software as a service tend to have a little bit more security built in. But again, with that said, it changes amongst the different platforms, and depending how you're using those, that also has to be considered as well. So some common certifications, CompTIA Cloud Plus, the CCSP is another good one. Common degrees, again, computer science, cloud computing, cybersecurity are ones that are very useful. Another thing I'll actually add in is understanding of a network. So if you're a network engineer or you have a strong networking background, that comes into play because everything that comes into a cloud is going over a network, and a lot of the configurations utilize these SD-WAN type of implementations where it's software defined networking. So understanding how the networking works and how to actually design the controls is really important as well. So recommended experience with cloud environments of 0 to 2 years is recommended. All right, narrowing down to the list. I know you guys have heard me, guys and gals, of course, have heard me speaking a lot of these. So coming into the last 3. So again, I really hope this is helpful. All right, so identity and access management, or you'll see it commonly referred to as IAM Analyst. And what they do is they manage access controls and identity management systems. So, of course, the core areas are identity management, access control, type of person, methodical, okay? Because when you're dealing with IAM, you're dealing with a lot of permissions and a lot of processes into how accounts are authenticated. So it sounds simple, but there's a lot of intricacies and a lot of technologies behind these systems that have to be implemented correctly. So to fit this, you want to be methodical and detail oriented. Okay. Employer requirements, experience with IAM systems such as Manage Engine, Okta, IBM, and of course, each of the cloud platforms has their own IAM. So the AWS, Azure, and GCP platforms are good to know. Some common duties, of course, are managing user access, implementing IAM policies. So it's not as simple as just creating an account and authenticating them. There are policies, restrictions, requirements, different attributes that an account needs to meet in order to get authentication. The list goes on. This gets very, very complicated and complex. So understanding all these principles is really important. Some common certifications, of course, Security Plus, CISSP Associate, and there are specific certs for each of the cloud providers, in addition to the different offerings such as Manage Engine, Okta, IBM, and others, that you can get a certification that teach you the IAM principles. What's good about these is that while they're perhaps vendor specific, learning those principles, you could take it from one and implement it into others by then learning their interfaces and how they apply the principles, but really getting that core understanding by getting, certification in one of those vendor specific certs could be very useful. One thing I'll advise is if you're looking at a vendor specific cert, I say go and list out about 10 different positions and look to see what are the most commonly used platforms, so that if I get one cert in a platform, does it cover most of these positions? Okay, so that is one way to pretty much choose which one out of the many different vendor certifications that are out there. Common degrees are basically an IT degree. Most of those will work and apply really well, and of course a cybersecurity degree helps as well. I'd throw in computer science, because the type of thinking that you utilize when developing works really well for this. So experience with IAM tools from 0 to 2 years is a good recommended experience. Security compliance analyst. So core areas of compliance, regulatory standards. So understanding how and why they're applied and what a company needs to do in order to meet the requirements is important. The type of person that fits this. Ethical, right? Doing the right thing, following what the due diligence that's required is important. And of course, being detail oriented. And I'll also throw in there being organized. So you should be really good with documentation, managing your time, and of course, communication. Employer requirements. So of course, understanding of compliance requirements. Common duties, ensuring adherence to regulations. Of course, you need to know and understand auditing security practices. Some common certs, again, this is one where the accolade CCRF is a really good one. Highly recommend that one, and Security Plus, and then some of the other GRC related certifications are good as well. Common degrees, information security, business degrees, or any degree that really brings in documentation and organization, okay? If you're a project manager, this is a really good way to connect that field into cybersecurity. So some recommended experience, 0 to 2 years in compliance or security roles. One good thing about this is, since these tend to be a little less technical, these type of fields, you don't necessarily need to have that strong technical background to get into these, but you do need to understand the different compliance and regulations. All right, the last one I have listed, but of course there are so many more positions. These are just some that I decided to list for you to hopefully help you out, is a forensic analyst. So core areas, digital forensics, incident investigation. So this is where you're going to collect data in a particular manner. You're going to retrieve, analyze, search using keywords, but you also have to have a really strong documentation and follow processes, because everything that you do needs to be included in a report and you need to be able to speak to it. So again, core areas of digital forensics and incident investigation are key. The type of person, the personality fit, you definitely need to be methodical, and I can't even stress enough detail oriented. So I've been a forensic analyst, and I can tell you, if you make one mistake, you don't document even one thing, it could get a case thrown out. Of course, if you don't follow proper procedures, such as hashing your drive when you collect evidence, or verifying that you've gathered up all the evidence, every little tiny step is absolutely critical to a case and needs to be documented. So having that detail-oriented mindset is an absolute must. Employer requirements, so experience with forensic tools, of course. Common duties, of course, analyzing digital evidence and supporting investigation. So during an investigation, you'll be asked to both provide and perhaps research or search for particular items. So you have to be able to track everything you're doing and expect that you're going to be asked to do and retrieve different things, okay? Of course, if they're available. Common certifications, the GCFE and Security Plus, and there are vendor-specific forensic certifications that you can get, such as like OpenText, for example. They have forensic examiners, Parabin, the list goes on and on. But you can get some of those vendor ones, and the good thing is that they tend to translate pretty well between each other. Once you get those forensic principles, learning how to use the different software, it becomes a little bit easier, but again, the principles remain the same. You have to be detail-oriented, document everything, and follow processes. Some common degrees found are computer science, cybersecurity. There are some colleges that offer digital forensic degrees. Those are good ones as well. And recommended experience, 0 to 2 years in digital forensics or incident response. These two careers are pretty close. They do differ, but they're fairly close in that they both deal with incidents. So, you know, if you're an incident responder, maybe becoming a forensic analyst is a good route for you. Or maybe you've done the forensic analyst, you want to go to a different route and go to incident response. And then, again, you can branch out to these different positions. So that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, please like, subscribe, share this video if you found it helpful, especially if you're new to cybersecurity, you're not sure what position suits you. I hope that the insights I gave you will be helpful to you. And again, I will post a link to this document, and thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.